20 minutes for questions after remarks. Okay, Minister.
Well, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I want to welcome our wonderful media friends to be here with me, with both Leah and Jean, two extraordinary colleagues of mine, extraordinary MP colleagues of mine from this area. But the reason we wanted to get together today is that the Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister released the Fall Economic Statement earlier this week. And I think that there are a lot of measures in here that are measures that help Canadians right now. And I think what you'll see in the Fall Economic Statement as well is that it shows that the government has been listening and that we're acting on what we are hearing. And I'll talk about sort of three broad parts of the Fall Economic Statement. The first part is really about our housing action plan. And here it's about getting more homes built and getting more homes built faster. We're spending $15 billion more for funding of apartment construction. It'll get us 30,000 more homes. We're adding $1 billion for affordable housing, public not-for-profit housing. We're freeing up federal lands so that more houses can be built on federal lands. We're fast-tracking with municipalities so that so that projects and housing can be built faster. And you saw a wonderful start of that already in the York region in Vaughan, and that's terrific due to the Housing Accelerated Fund. A second part of this is that we really need more homes. We really need more housing, and what we've been seeing are some housing that has been used for short-term rentals that really essentially then it makes that stock of housing not available to those people who need homes. So we're going to crack down on bad actors who are in the short-term rental market. And what we're doing here is we're going to provide municipalities with $50 million to step up enforcement for short-term rental for the enforcement of those who do not meet the short-term rental restrictions that municipalities put through. We're also going to deny income tax deductions for a variety of expenses related to short-term rentals, particularly if someone is running a short-term rental, if they're not complying with local restrictions. Of course, if you're complying with the local bylaws, then of course you get access to the deductions. But if you aren't, then you're no longer going to be allowed those tax deductions, and you will be subject to stepped up enforcement for that short-term rental. So essentially, on our housing plan, it really is about better financing, less red tape, more land to get houses built. And then the second pillar in this Fall Economic Statement won't surprise any of you. Our government from day one has always talked about the work we do to support middle-class Canadians, and this is no different. We know how Canadians are feeling today about interest rates, for example, and many Canadians who are looking to renew their mortgage are feeling, are feeling. They're feeling some anxiety about that. So we've created here a new mortgage charter. So this is really about no more fees charged for relief measures when you need them, no more requalifying for mortgage renewals, no interest that is charged on interest. We're also going to do things like that will put more money into the pockets of day-to-day Canadians around cracking down on hidden junk fees. So these are things that lots of Canadians deal with every single day. Reducing NSF fees by the banks. We are going to investigate how roaming charges are applied by the telecommunication companies. We're going to put a stop to the airline seat selection fees for kids under 14. And you've heard us talk a lot about helping groceries, make sure that groceries are more affordable for Canadians. And it's about making sure that there's more competition in the among the grocery stores, and this is securing commitments from the big grocery chains so that they will stabilize prices. And this is in addition to the actions that we've already taken over the last couple of years, whether it is doubling the GST tax credit, so that the grocery tax credit, applying a new Canada dental benefit so that families have access to dental care, eliminating the interest on Canada student loans for young people, and much more. And you know, the other thing, what we're seeing post-pandemic is a need for Canadians to get access to services like psychotherapy and counseling services. That's been really important, and you know what, it's really good that Canadians are getting access to this because it's needed at this particular time. So it's a good thing, but it's also a household expense. So here we are, there's no more HST on those services. And the other thing that I think, especially after COVID, absolutely. I mean, and then I think the other really important thing here that I hear a lot from constituents, it's amending the Competition Act so that there is the right to repair. And here I'm going to actually share a personal story from a constituent who actually said to me, look, a number of years ago, his fridge broke down. And the fridge was less than 10 years old, and it was perfectly fine. And in fact, the repair person said, look, all you need to do is have this part, and we'll replace it. It won't cost you very much. But when he called the fridge company or the manufacturer, they said that part was no longer available. And instead of paying, you know, what is a minimum amount for the manufacturer to get that part, he would now be in a position to spend $800 for a new fridge. But here's what the constituent said, and this is a very interesting story, because he said, I wasn't going to pay for a new fridge. I just thought that this was wrong. And what did he do? He has 3 children, and he borrowed a small fridge from a neighbor. And so his wife and 3 kids lived out of that mini fridge for 6 weeks. Can you imagine? Out of a small mini fridge for 6 weeks, he said, while he fought with the manufacturer. And he said, you know, he insisted that the lack of the circuit board was their problem, not his as a consumer. Right. So eventually, what the manufacturer did was give him 50% off on a new fridge. It still costed more than it should have, but the moral of the story here is that the right to repair is something that is really important, and that's what is in this fall economic statement. And then the last pillar of yes,
the other thing on the right to repair is
yes,
it has environmental impact.
Absolutely,
right.
Yes,
We don't have these large appliances going into the landfill.
Yes,
constantly. So it's a great thing from both perspectives.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Thank you so much, Leah. And then the third pillar is really about an economy, continuing to build an economy that works for all Canadians. And this one is particularly you know, special for me. I'm a trade minister. I'm also a minister responsible for economic development, and we are here in the Greater Toronto Area. We're here in York Region, and think about the dynamism of the businesses that are here in this region in particular. This is something we've been doing from day one, which is, and what is that? It's actually growing a green economy. But I think what you're seeing here now are you're starting to see the results of it. You're starting to see projects, and you're starting to see companies. They are growing, they are emerging, and what they're looking for are the incentives that we have put in place so that as they are growing their companies, particularly clean technology companies, those that are in, you know, part of the green economy, can actually get the benefits and the incentives to actually do more of this. And we're seeing clean growth projects everywhere, and particularly here because we're so innovative. There's lots of incredible technology. We've got great, you know, domestic manufacturing here. We've got the battery, you know, electric vehicle battery supply chain up and down here. You know, critical minerals that are, you know, that literally is the beginning of the supply chain. But here in this area,
and talented people,
and skilled.
Universities, right?
Absolutely. So you can see that we're excited about this pillar because I think it's just so important for our clean, our green economy, clean tech entrepreneurs and businesses, particularly here in the Greater Toronto Area, particularly here in York Region, to see the Canadian government continue to make sure that we are supporting their efforts at growing, because when they grow, then they're creating jobs. They're creating jobs for Canadians, and they're creating jobs right here in York Region. And when jobs are created, then our quality of life for families is improved. So this budget is rather this
example.
Yes,
This one is an
please,
example
yeah.
of one of the companies I visited recently, a Canadian company called Axiom in Aurora. And I was talking to them, and why I mentioned the talent and the universities is that, you know, he has a choice. He's growing his business, and what they're doing is they would develop parts for vehicles and ship them, and now they've decided they're going to create and manufacture an entire vehicle here, electric vehicle, in Canada. And it's going to be done from start to finish. And he had a choice of where to locate this factory because he has businesses in North America. He wants to have it in the area. He wants to have it in Ontario. And partially he said it's because we have such great universities, secondary schools, and great talent in our people. And you know, we sometimes take that for granted, how well educated our workforce is and how innovative they are. And it was really one of his top reasons for wanting to stay here. So the fact that we're offering now these tax credits for clean technology is a big deal because other countries offer them, the United States offers them. So now we're competitive, and he can say not only because of the skills and the jobs here, but financially it makes sense for him to stay in Canada. And that's so important for us.
It really, really is. So if you look at if you look at this fall economic statement, let's build more houses because look at how dynamic our region is. We have growing families, people want to be here, so more housing is really important. Continuing to support the middle class and growing that green economy that is so important to today's economy, but also to the future economy. So that's the track that we're on, and maybe with that I'll pass it over you to Jean to say a few words.
Jiao San Hao. I'm very happy to be here with my colleagues, and I just want to touch upon responsible government spending. We will expand what we started off in Budget 2023, and we are going to be looking at government spending with departments and agencies. I'm sure many of you have already heard the Treasury Board President, Anita Anand, have a plan with all the ministers, including this one right here, trying to find $15 billion in every ministry. That's a lot. And so we're hoping that that will generate additional savings of $345.6 million in 2025, and then $691 million ongoing. Because we have a lot of great programs that we are focusing on, whether it's our child care, whether it's the dental care. There's a lot that we have going on. And then also we will be looking at trying to have responsible investments to meet the current needs of Canadians. And we are going to reduce previously announced investments that remain unallocated or is no longer required. So that that will result in a savings of $480 million in 6 years, starting in 2023 to 2024. And of course, we are committed to continuing to combat financial crimes, whether it's strengthening Canada's anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing regimes, or updating the risk of crypto assets. And I should also mention that, you know, we have the strongest debt to GDP ratio in all the G7 countries, as well as the highest GDP in the G7 countries. And I think that's because we were on solid financial footing before the pandemic, and that certainly helped us deliver very quickly our pandemic benefits, and also the continuing support during COVID for individuals as well as businesses. And I'm sure one of you can talk more about the CEBA, how we extended the loans another year. That all helps sustain our economy.
Yeah, and I think just following on what Jean was saying, it's, you know, when you take a step back, my background is finance and economics, when you take a step back and look at the big picture of what's going on, really our country, despite the challenges, and we know that there are challenges for everyday Canadians, inflation is still high, but our inflation rate has come down significantly. It has come down from a high of over 8%, right down to 3.2% now. So we have really brought it down, and the price of groceries as well. And I think that when you look again at what we did during COVID, the spending we had to support Canadians and businesses, that has resulted in us having 1 million more jobs now than we had before. Because we kept businesses going, we kept investment going. And I think for Canadians, a job, when you talk about the economy, I think people having a job is one of the most important things. You know, that sense that you can work, you can bring home a paycheck. Yes, sometimes it may be tough to make ends meet. But also when you look at our economy overall, foreign direct investment is very important to a country, and we are the 3rd highest now after the United States and Brazil. So we're ahead of the US right now in foreign direct investment in Canada. That's pretty amazing as well. So people see Canada as a great place to invest. And I think, again, it's the things we've talked about, our workforce, critical minerals, investing in our economy. And we're looking to the future. We're looking to the green economy, the future, not the past. And that is so important for us. So I think all of those things, and as Jean said, our spending has come down. We are balancing the need to take care of Canadians and invest in our country because we believe we need to invest in our country. It's a good investment. With spending, trying to keep spending down, because we also know that we don't want inflation to be high. We want to bring interest rates down. So it's a very tight balance, and I think this government has done a very good job of finding the balance between taking care of Canadians in our economy and ensuring that interest rates and inflation do not rise again. And I think we're on a good track for that, Mary. So.
Yes, and also in that refocused spending that I talked about, $15.4 billion, we're also returning the public service closer to its pre-pandemic growth track.
And with that, we'll turn to questions from the media.
Okay, this is wonderful news, and thank you for all you guys' hard work. I just want really interesting is like the interest rate that in the banking these days is really high compared to beginning of the pandemic. Is it the federal government having any plan to slow down the interest rate or actually drop it?
Well, I would say that we've had a plan right from the very beginning. Inflation was high, coming off of not only COVID, but the war in Ukraine, the shocks in supply chains around the world. And what you're seeing in this fall economic statement is very much a discipline so that we are investing in Canadians, but in such a way that will not cause inflation to rise. And that's really important because the Bank of Canada, which is independent from government, looks at how the government is going to pursue its spending. And you heard the Bank of Canada governor say just a few days ago that he thought that this fall economic statement was, exactly on the right track that way, and that interest is holding. I think what Canadians can count on is the government to continue to make sure that we are supporting Canadians, we're supporting middle-class Canadians, at the same time be responsible in such a way that we keep inflation where it is and heading sort of in the right direction. And it is heading in the right direction. Interest rates, I mean, it's holding and it's heading it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and inflation dropped from 3.8% to 3.1%.
Just recently.
Right?
Yeah,
just recently.
You have a follow-up or another question?
I think the members of the media want to have dim sum.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Frank from Impact Daily. So far, what measures has been taken by the federal government to contain the groceries price increase? What achievement have been done? Any new or more plans to work on these issues? Because I believe that the public's feeling, the real feeling, is quite different from what you have described.
Yeah, I'll respond to that a little bit because I'm sitting on the Agriculture Committee, and we're the committee that originally did the food price study. And we are now, actually, I just came yesterday out of a vaulted room where all the grocery stores had brought the responses that our Minister of Industry and Innovation, François-Philippe Champagne, had requested when he met with them. And I sat down and looked through this binder of all of the documents of what the grocery stores are doing and planning to do, as well as the food manufacturing and processing companies, because of course their costs, grocery chains, are dictated by that. So I'd say that there are significant measures the grocery store chains are taking. I can't talk about it, of course, because it's confidential under the Competition Act, but they are taking measures. Food inflation has come down, and it has come down more than the general CPI right now. So although it's still, prices are still high, it is not increasing at the rate it was. So that is good. We're going in the right direction. And I think that we'll see, as these plans get into place, that you will feel more of a difference moving forward. The other thing, and I think Minister Ng referenced that, was the work we're doing on the Competition Act, and that's outlined in the fall economic statement. So obviously in a free market, greater competition has an impact on prices. And so we're ensuring that their independent grocers can compete with the large chains so that people have more choice as to where to go. So I think that's another important part of the equation.
Yeah, and maybe what I would do is adding to that. Thank you so much, Leah. I mean, on the specifics of the question, but I would say this is the reason why we're so focused on measures, other measures that actually put money into Canadians' pockets, right? So having a rebate on groceries was one of those things. If you're a family where, for example, as you know, as I pointed out here, who right now after COVID is looking for, you know, some of those counseling services, and you're spending that money, we want to be able to help you with that. So by taking the HST off. Childcare, childcare, which you would normally pay as a family. You know, if you paid here in Markham, I know because I, you know, made calls around, it has absolutely decreased by 50%. So what you would have paid, you know, let's say you would have paid, you know, $500 a month in the past. By the way, it's not that; it's more than that. I'll just say it as an example. But it's been reduced by 50%. So that is actual money that is in your pocket. The Canada Child Benefit is indexed to inflation. That puts direct money. So what you're seeing is recognizing that that the measures we are taking to make sure that there's greater food affordability. We know that working to stabilize prices with grocery chains, working on the Competition Act is a really important thing to do. But for immediate measures to actually put money in people's pocket, that's what you see our government being very focused on. So we're answering a question about groceries with an answer. We're answering that question, but we're answering it with, you know, measures that actually are putting money in people's pocket, because that's actually how we look at it. We're looking at it from a standpoint of how do you help support middle-class Canadians? How do you make it better for their day-to-day lives? How do you make sure that we're, you know, on the one hand being responsible so that we're not affecting inflation, but at the same time putting in very specific measures, dealing with junk fees. Junk fees are, it's extra money that you have to put out of your pocket. When you deal with that, you keep that money. So that's the way I want people to think about the fall economic statement. It's about, and the measures that this government always takes, which is how do we address the issues that Canadians talk to us about, like you said, how people feel. How do we address that? How do we listen to that? And then how do we address that so that we are actually doing those very real things that will actually make a difference to the day-to-day family and Canadians? So we laid out the fall economic statement in the range of measures, but those range of measures fall in addition to others. But at the end of the day, it's about, you know, it's about doing those things, listening as a government and doing those things that we can do so that it makes life just a little easier for families and for people.
And don't forget, we also have the Climate Action Incentive Fund, Initiative Fund, right, which every Canadian has access to.
Yeah, automatically gets the check 4 times a year, and in fact, that's a really key point, Jean, because the Climate Action Incentive Program is basically money 4 times a year in people's pockets. And for most Canadians, 80% of Canadian households get back more than they end up paying to fight climate change. And I think that's part of what people don't realize sometimes, is that we're doing both. We're fighting climate change and we're tackling affordability. And they're both very important because climate change is costing us billions of dollars right now. Every time there's a big drought out west, or there's an atmospheric river in British Columbia, or a flood in Halifax, those events cost us, not just in terms of the cleanup and the restoration, they cost us in terms of lost economic activity. They cost us in terms of farms that can't produce food. They affect our food prices. And so these things that we can address, because while we are working hard on food prices, the fact is that these increases have been caused by global phenomenon. So Canada itself cannot fix it, and that's why what you said about putting money back into people's hands to address it while we're working on bringing them down is so important.
And climate change isn't stopping. It continues to go on. And I just want to say 2 other points about the Competition Bureau under the Modernizing the Act and so forth. It's going to be strengthened. I think last time you were here you mentioned about strengthening the powers and the tools to crack down on abuses of bigger companies like predatory pricing. And I also want to mention that there's an establishment of a grocery task force.
I just want to give the media one last chance to ask questions that they still might have.
Yes. Right now, a lot of businesses are talking about the extension of repaying the COVID loan from the government. And in this statement, they didn't mention any chances to extend the repayment. Because a lot of businesses say that if they don't have the extension, they will close down the business ultimately. And what is your comment on or thinking of the extension for 1 more year?
So the reason it's not in here, well, actually, it actually is referenced in here, but it is referenced in there. But the reason, sort of, I didn't talk about it is because we've, we've actually taken action on that, and I'll explain it. I mean, having been the former small business minister and have spent a lot of time supporting, working with Canadians and Canadian small businesses to make sure that they were supported throughout the pandemic. You'll remember that that this was a loan that was rolled out immediately. So about over 900,000 Canadian small businesses got access to it, and the requirement to repay it would give you eligibility for the $10,000 or the $20,000 that's forgivable. So what we did here is we are saying, and these loans, by the way, businesses have gotten them from the institutions that they bank at, right? So I want to applaud those businesses because there are many who've actually, who just, by working with their financial institution, actually have managed to get refinancing. So what does that mean? It means that they've refinanced the $40,000 or $60,000, and in doing so, that forgivable portion, has been extended. So in fact, it is a 1-year extension. They have, so if you got a refinancing, and you have until March of 2024 to get that refinancing from the bank that you already got your loan from. Many businesses are doing that. We're encouraging many businesses to do that. And once they get the refinancing done, then they have an extra year. So they actually do have that extra year. And they also are still continuing to be eligible for that forgivable portion. And then if they're, and then beyond that, if if they're not able to access that forgivable piece, they are going to, this loan at present will then roll over into into a loan that'll be at 5% interest. So we've been very thoughtful about how to keep supporting small businesses, giving them this extension. There is an extension, and I applaud so many of the businesses that went through what I think has been the toughest time that they ever faced. But as as Leah says, like today, it is precisely because of the supports that we put in during COVID. The wage benefit that actually helped businesses like this that were shut, were still able to pay their employees, and that's why when COVID, when we were recovering and businesses started opening again, they could essentially open the door. Their employees were still with them, and therefore Canada's recovery was faster. And today, over 1 million jobs today than pre-pandemic. The employment rate continues to be low. One of the things I think is really important, and Leah said this earlier as well, for families, for people having a job and to continue to having a job gives you that security, that financial security to continue to, to continue to have, the life that you're used to having. And small businesses are a very big part of that, because that growth in jobs many of it actually also come from existing small businesses. So, you know, to small businesses across the country, I want them to know, first, thank you so much, because you are really the backbones of our economy all across the country. You're 98% of all businesses in the country, and you have weathered so well during this pandemic. CEBA, like I said, get your refinancing. So I would encourage every single business that has received a CEBA loan, go to your bank, go to the institution that actually gave you the loan, because we remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of like, you know, how do you qualify for it? So that's, you know, and get yourself refinanced, because the minute you do that and you have until March to do that, then you've got that 1-year extension, and you've got that 1-year extension, you still get access to, you know, to the forgivable part, but it's a big thank you. You're so important to our economy, and just you know, your resiliency. I'm just so impressed with it. I mean, everywhere we go across the country, you know, the small business owners, I just think it was just so hard and so brave. I mean, but we're going to be there, and we have been there. But we also want to be responsible. I mean, you know, we are, you know, we've come out of COVID. And there are issues we're still dealing with from that. But when you look at the numbers, I mean, the lowest debt to GDP ratio, over 1 million jobs, unemployment still being low, wages now sort of, you know, increasing and therefore good for workers. Like, these are all indicators. Lowest debt to GDP ratio, Canada preserving our AAA credit rating. Like, these are all indicators, and you know, our fiscal anchor being sound, which says that our economic plan is actually working for Canadians, and we're going to keep doing this work. And you know, we're, you know, I'll speak personally. I mean, it's terrific having another wonderful, you know, female leader in the finance minister, the first ever finance minister who was a female, but also the deputy prime minister of the country, who has really, you know, led this effort along with the rest of us who are, you know, who are a part of cabinet and caucus.
And keeping our eye on the deficit, and
yeah,
keeping
absolutely
right at the 40 billion mark.
And then just given time, sorry, we just have time for one more quick question, so I want to make sure media get that in.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing before we go on. Page 41 and 42 of the Fall Economic Statement addresses the CEBA loan.
Perfect.